This isn't as much as a horror story as it's just baffling. A recruitment post was made for a Pirates play-by-post game in an RPG forum, described as a game where you play as pirates. With a system to play as pirates, even the name of the game could be taken from a pirate novel. 4 other players and me join the game and create our characters. We start the game and the DM describes that our characters are in a tavern in a pirate town, looking for a job. We roleplay a bit between us to get to know the PCs of the other players, a courtier fallen in disgrace that is trying to make a new life, a few hardened sailors, an impoverished doctor, and a schnobbis ex-official of the Navy down on his luck that looks disapprovingly at the lack of manners and morals of the customers in the tavern, but needs the money. And then someone from a famous pirate ship, a ship whose name is in the title of the game, gets to the tavern and announces that they want people for the next voyage. We, of course, inquire a bit about what we're going to do and try to get a job there. It is, after all, a pirate game, and this is the hook to start the adventure. Well, not all of us. The ex-soldier decides that after learning that the job was for a pirate ship, he couldn't accept the job because his character's morals wouldn't allow it, and he left the tavern to go looking for a job at another kind of ship, maybe an explorer ship. Did I say already that it was a game about pirates? For those wondering, the DM simply took him out of the game, and the adventurer went on with the 4 players instead of 5. But it was the most baffling, it was what my character would do situation that I have encountered. Yeah, I've never been a fan of the whole "it's what my character would do" aspect and excuse. Granted, this example is really very tame, as it seems like the player didn't really get the concept of the game. If it walks like a pirate, talks like a pirate, and is named like a pirate, you should expect, shock of all shocks, a pirate. Hello everyone, I'm Sweeps, and let's keep this going. Long time lurker around here, and I finally have one to share. This happened last week at a group I've been playing with for about 6 months. I'm the forever DM, but one of the players wanted to try DMing a one-shot. There were 5 people in total, but the only ones that matter for this story are, names changed to protect the innocent, Jason, the new DM, Todd, new to this group and a cousin of Jason, pretty clearly an experienced player, me, forever DM, playing a wizard. The plot of the one-shot doesn't really matter. We all show up for the session with characters ready to go. Todd asked ahead of time to lightly homebrew the Echo Knight fighter subclass. He posted his revisions to the group chat ahead of time, and they were all pretty mild and mostly flavor. But then the session arrives. Todd shows up with an Echo Knight that was so homebrewed that it didn't even resemble the original subclass. I didn't read his revisions too much, but his Echo was essentially an entire additional PC. This additional PC was a concurrent leveled multi-class cleric fighter. On top of that, while his Echo was out, his sword was a perpetual +5 weapon. This fact was clearly hidden in his write-up. Even I almost missed it. Myself and another player immediately called him out on this. He tried to explain to Jason how it wasn't that OP, and we both said that he was obviously trying to pull one over on the new DM. Jason was clearly uncomfortable because this was his cousin, so he let it run despite us once again making it very clear this PC will anything that comes our way. A few combats in, and surprise, surprise, the rest of the party is basically twiddling their thumbs. Todd shows his PC to be outright evil, used a hostage as a shield, burnt down a building because the baddies were locked inside with innocents, that kind of stuff. At this point, myself and other players were just hanging out and drinking a couple beers since there wasn't much else for us to do. In-game, it was basically a party following this demigod maniac. Jason picked up on this, but did nothing. Fast forward to the end of the session against the big bad, and Todd actually ends up going down. His Echo casts Healing Word to bring him back up. I cast Counterspell. The rest of the party laughed, but Todd was pissed. The Echo uses Action Surge and casts Healing Word again. The Sorcerer casts Counterspell. The Barbarian then runs up and finishes off Todd's PC. Todd asks why we would do something like that. It's what our characters would do. You are very clearly an evil character, and we would have no hope of ever taking you down ourselves, so we helped him do it. Todd throws a mini tantrum fit for a 12-year-old, hilarious on a 28-year-old man, packs up and leaves. Needless to say, I said that he was never welcome at a table I'm DMing, and if I'm not DMing, just don't invite me. The rest of the party agreed. Okay. Now, while I said I didn't care for the "it's what my character would do" in the last story, I do have to admit it's pretty funny here. Granted, I'm not for in-game solutions for problems like this, and I don't want to put too much on Jason since he is a new DM, and the problem player in this is family to him. So it'd be awkward, obviously. Todd is the problem player here, and considering that he's taking advantage of his familiar relationship with Jason, this is a real dick move on his part, especially when you do this to put the rest of the party on the sidelines. If you're a new DM, you can have family and loved ones in your campaigns, but you need to realize that if someone pulls this, they need to be talked to, and if the rest of your players are having an issue with it, you need to speak up on their behalf. Honestly, I can imagine that Jason has some issues to deal with since his cousin comes off as whiny, and I wouldn't put it past him if he would use this against his cousin at family reunions. But I'm also still a little bit on the whole killing the character within the campaign portion. Like, I get it's a problem, but just kick him and don't invite him to your own games. Don't show up to the games that he's going to either. But that's just me. Now for another story. Not so much a horror story for me, but a cautionary tale as I feel a bit guilty about it. I and one other player joined an, already ongoing, PF1E Reign of Winter online campaign. The DM warned us that he had ramped up a lot of the enemies, and to compensate gave us a lot of bonuses. We had a choice of extra feats, extra traits, 2 free feats or 4 free traits, or a free magic item, which could be a +3 magic weapon. Given his warning, I made what I thought to be a flavorful but still powerful Unchained Rogue, who made his own obsidian knives. Knife Master Sanctified Rogue archetype stack, sent by the Church of Lomende, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to investigate rumors of dangerous witchcraft. I had a lot of skills, and so long as I could get off my sneak attack, I had various methods of doing this, like Vanish as a spell-like ability. I could do 5 very powerful attacks per turn. Woof, dangerous. I assumed the other newcomer was similarly optimized, given that I had learned about the existing party members, a high damage kinetics, and a multi-class caster with multiple undead minions. I was wrong. We arrived at the same time, and as we proceeded towards the party, there was nothing his character could really do. He spoke a few languages besides Common, none of them region appropriate, so he couldn't negotiate with NPCs. He didn't have any particularly high skills, and he couldn't scout ahead without being detected as I could. Eventually, we joined the existing party. We discussed the plan in character, they accepted us into their group, all of our goals aligned, at least short term, although my character was a bit uncomfortable with the necromancer, and we had our first combat. 2 powerful Fae. I go on the surprise round, hiding close to the enemy, and go on the initiative. The caster goes first, the kineticists go third, and then the newcomer. I think he was a fighter barbarian multiclass. Caster blinds him with a spell. I attack with thrown knives. I roll really well, and one enemy is dead, even after his DR. Not bleeding out, dead. The kineticist drops the other enemy to a -4. We're about an hour and a half into the session, and the other newcomer hasn't gotten to do anything. We have another combat. It goes about the same. The enemy managed to get a turn in before the fighter barbed but then it was down. I had a great time, and I think the existing players and DM did too, but the new player was increasingly quiet towards the end of the session, and he quit the server right afterwards. Looking back, I think I might have made a character who did what he wanted to do, just better. The campaign is still ongoing, some new people have joined and we're all really enjoying it, though the DM wasn't lying, those enemies are dangerous as hell and they will coup de grace you! But I do feel a bit responsible for the newcomers not staying. TLDR, I overshot another player without intending to, and he left the campaign after 1 session. Gonna be completely honest here, OP isn't at fault here. There's nothing wrong with making an optimized character, especially in a game where dice are involved and you roll for things like stats and have a plethora of traits, items, and feats to choose from, that unless you're experienced or use a guide, you're not going to be getting an OP character off the bat. Honestly, I'd be more on the DM with this, especially when it comes to character creation, not to say that the DM was a bad guy in this particular situation, but when you know what stats and what your PCs can do, you need to be able to tailor your encounters and story to accommodate them. As well as with the language thing, I think that could have gone to something much better. When you're making a character with your players, you should inform them of what they should be prioritizing in the story, such as a more charismatic character build for those role-playing moments, or a battle-hardened warrior for fighting against the forces of evil. There's not too much information to really gauge the story appropriately though, but OP, this is not your fault, at least where this robot is standing and what you've told me. This story happened 2 years ago on Roll20 and is about the worst game anti-player DM I have ever had. The game started off with the party as slaves aboard a ship. Not a bad start, but the DM had the slavers sell all of our starting equipment, which at level 3 is devastating. We somehow managed to fight our way off the ship, only for our monk to get their leg blown off in the process. Oh yes, see, this DM used this incredibly punishing critical injuries table that had something like a 40% chance of being dismembered if you were crit. Oh boy, deja vu. Now this wouldn't have been so bad as the game was described as RP heavy, except the DM either kept throwing combat encounters at us, or made combat the only way to deal with problems. So we get off the ship to freedom, only to be immediately arrested and made into debt slaves for the crime of not having a passport.
Doesn't have his passport.
And our bounty is set at an exorbitant price of 5,000 GP. Again, level 3! To add insult to injury, our characters were fitted with bomb collars around our necks that would explode if we tried to remove them or traveled more than 5 miles from the city.
What, we some kind of...
But don't worry, it's not real slavery, our DM said. Besides, we could also pay out our death by undertaking these incredibly deadly tasks, which almost certainly would result in death or more dismemberment. How fun! Even better, every, and I quite literally mean every NPC that the party met was either a complete asshole, and openly rude, hostile, or condescending to the party for no reason, or was having the most horrible, messed up stuff done to them, like being thrown into lava, which the DM laughed as he described, or being lynched in the middle of the street. Not everyone's like this, our DM insisted when we complained. And it's like, when every NPC we met acted like this, then they kinda are. Things came to a head after 5 sessions that made me leave, if everything else hadn't made me want to. An orphan boy we met whose parents were just viciously executed in front of him asked us to escort him to a nearby convent to be raised by the nuns. When we arrived, the DM described us hearing the screaming of a young girl from the basement, but when we inquired about it, the nuns were incredibly vague and just told us not to worry about it. During the night, the orphan wakes the party and tells us they have a young tiefling girl held captive in the basement and begs us to go rescue her. We investigate, and the girl is held in a small cell with a force field emanating from an upright staff on the floor. When we try asking the girl why she's in prison, she's similarly vague like the nuns and refuses to give us a straight answer. Then the Mother Superior finds us and only tells us over and over again that the girl is a demon with no further elaboration, but also that, being a pacifist, she won't stop us if we attempt to free her. We decided to leave well enough alone, which clearly irritated the DM, and then he described the orphan boy removing the staff from the ground and freeing the girl. Only for both of them to transform into demon lords of war and tyranny in this setting and teleport away. The Mother Superior is now suddenly all talk, blaming the party and saying it's our fault, as the DM believed too. And her order broke their oath of pacifism years ago to capture the demon, and that they were not responsible for recapturing them. Looking back, the DM clearly intended for the party to free the demon and then reveal it to us in an epic twist gotcha moment, but everything about it was just so contrived and made no sense. Why did the demon lord even need us there at all to free his kin? Why couldn't the nuns just be upfront in the first place so we'd leave the girl alone? Why would the nuns be willing to break their vow of pacifism to capture the female demon lord but not to contain her? Why did they have such a crappy prison where literally anyone, let alone another demon lord, could just walk in, grab the staff, and free her in a pinch? How in the hell were the nuns failing their guard our fault? How the hell were a party of level 3s meant to capture 2 demon lords? And for that matter, how the f*** were we meant to do anything when we were still slaves? This contrived bullshit was the last straw for me, and I left before the next session. F*** you, Bearfish. You know, false advertising, being extremely harsh to your PZs, using the NPCs as a means of verbally abusing your players and pulling stuff out of your ass. It's like the unholy trinity of being a bad DM. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to mess with your players, but there's always a line that you can't cross, and at the same time, you need to let your players know what they're getting into, as well as making sure your plots actually make sense. But yeah, I'm not a perfect DM, but I like to think I'm better than this DM Bearfish, maybe? I don't know, is that what he called him? Anyway, I'm Sweeps, thanks for watching, and if you made it to this part of the video, please put it down in the comment, Demon Lord, so that way I know you've made it to this part of the video. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to show love to the Reddit posters. Have a nice day.